Who should determine what's right and what's wrong? I'm Christy Birchfield. Today we're starting Jonah chapter 4. Now, we've been through an awful lot with this series as you're looking through just Jonah as the reluctant follower of God. If you've missed any, make sure you click on the link in the description below. It'll take you to the full playlist because there's a lot leading up to this particular session today. But first, when we think about the idea of rules, laws, those things are things that are set in place in order to help us determine what would be considered right and what would be considered wrong. We see laws from the Bible as well as God was seeking to help people have a set measure of what they can understand as right and wrong. However, the issue becomes an issue when we start to think that we made the list of what's right and what's wrong, or that we can dictate the list of what's right and what's wrong. Sometimes it can even get to be the place where we don't think that God has the right to determine what's right and what's wrong. Our verse today is Jonah chapter 4, verse 1. But the verse before it that we saw in yesterday's session talks about the fact that God relented and forgave the people of Nineveh. Jonah preached his message. They received it. They understood. They repented. And even though they thought they had no hope, God saw their hearts and God relented and forgave them. Jonah chapter 4, verse 1 says, "But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong, and he became angry." Jonah didn't think it was right. Jonah didn't think that God forgiving the people was right. He thought that there should be judgment. He thought God's compassion and God's mercy were wrong. Because he thought all of that, he got angry. Now, how often do we look at the circumstances around us and think that we know better than God? Or maybe we don't agree with what God chose to allow in a certain situation. If we're being honest, in those situations, we're just like Jonah. We think we know better than God. The issue becomes when we start to second guess God or assume that we know more than God, and we'll get angry if God doesn't do what we expect him to do or what we thought he should do. We'll start to think that we hold the definition of what's right instead of God being the one who defines what's right and what's wrong. How do we determine what's right and what's wrong? Are we willing to allow God to be the one that makes that decision in every circumstance, knowing that he may not make the decision we expect or that we want? God is ultimately the source of truth and right. Our job is to align our thoughts with his, not the other way around. Are we seeking God and allowing God to determine what's right and what's wrong, knowing that he can give compassion and mercy however he chooses to because he's the one that sets the definitions in the first place? It's kind of a convicting thought. I'd love to hear any other thoughts that you have about this section or even Jonah in general. And make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.